The photo I was never supposed to see. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you couldn't imagine them lying to you? I did, and that trust almost destroyed me. The strange thing about betrayal is that it rarely arrives with a warning. It doesn't knock on your door and introduce itself. It hides behind smiles, promises, and late-night conversations. Then one day, the truth appears. And nothing is ever the same again. 3 years ago, I met Daniel. At the time, I thought he was everything I had been searching for. He was kind, funny, confident without being arrogant, the kind of man who remembered small details. The kind of man who brought coffee when you were stressed. The kind of man who made you believe that good people still existed. At least that's what I thought. For 2 years, our relationship seemed perfect. Of course, we argued sometimes. Every couple does. But whenever problems appeared, Daniel always knew exactly what to say. He would hold my hand, look into my eyes, and promise me that no matter what happened, he would never hurt me. I believed every word. Looking back now, that's the part that hurts the most. Not the lies, not even the betrayal. It was the fact that I trusted him completely. By the beginning of our 3rd year together, we were talking about marriage. My family loved him, my friends respected him, everyone thought we were the perfect couple. Even me, especially me. Then everything changed because of one photo. A single photo. It happened on a rainy Tuesday evening. I had just finished work and was sitting on my couch scrolling through social media. Daniel had texted me earlier. Working late tonight. Big meeting. Talk later. Nothing unusual. He worked late often, or at least that's what I thought. As I continued scrolling, my phone buzzed. A message request. From an account I didn't recognize. Normally I ignored random messages. But for some reason, I opened this one. There was no greeting, no explanation, just a photo, and underneath it, 6 words. Thought you deserve to know. My heart immediately began beating faster. I opened the image. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Then I noticed Daniel. There he was, wearing the exact same blue shirt he had worn that morning. Sitting at a restaurant, across from another woman, not a coworker, not a client, not a business meeting. The way they looked at each other made that obvious. His hand was resting on hers. And both of them were smiling. The kind of smile people wear when they're in love. I stared at the screen. My hands began shaking. No, I whispered it out loud. No, this isn't real. Maybe it was old, maybe it was edited, maybe there was another explanation. There had to be, right? I immediately called Daniel. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. Then a text arrived. Can't talk. Meeting still going. Meeting. I looked back at the photo. A meeting. The lie was so obvious now that it felt insulting. But even then, I wanted to believe him. That's the dangerous thing about love. Sometimes your heart fights against the truth. Even when the evidence is right in front of you. I replied with a simple question. How's the meeting going? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, he answered. Long, exhausting. I'll call when I get home. I felt sick, because now I knew. He wasn't just lying about another woman. He was lying directly to me. And doing it without hesitation. Without guilt, without fear. That realization hurt more than the photo itself. Because people don't become great liars overnight. They practice. Which meant this probably wasn't the first lie. It was simply the first one. I caught, and I had no idea how deep the truth actually went. 2. The investigation begins. That night, I barely slept. Questions kept running through my mind. Who was she? How long had this been happening? Was I overreacting, or had my entire relationship been a lie? The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Daniel immediately. Not yet. If he was lying, I needed proof. Real proof. Because once a confrontation begins, people become careful. And I wanted the truth. The entire truth. Over the next week, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. Suddenly, things I had ignored before began making sense. The late meetings, the cancelled plans, the weekends when he seemed distracted, the way he sometimes turned his phone screen away from me. Small things, tiny details, but together, they formed a picture. And that picture wasn't pretty. Then came the second clue. We were having dinner together when his phone lit up. Just for a second, long enough for me to see a name. Sophia. The message preview disappeared quickly. But I saw enough. A red heart emoji. That was all. Just one heart. Yet it felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Daniel immediately grabbed his phone. Too quickly, too nervously, and in that moment, I knew. He wasn't protecting work information. He was protecting secrets. After dinner, I pretended everything was normal. I laughed, smiled, acted exactly the same. Inside, however, I was breaking apart. Because every minute that passed made me realize something terrifying. The man sitting across from me wasn't the man I thought I knew. He was a stranger wearing a familiar face. A week later, the anonymous account messaged me again. This time there were multiple photos. Different restaurants, different days, different locations. Always Daniel, always the same woman. My worst fear had become reality. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't confusion. This was a relationship, a secret relationship, and somehow, I had become the outsider in my own love story. That's when sadness slowly transformed into anger. Not explosive anger, not screaming anger, something colder, something quieter, the kind of anger that waits, the kind of anger that plans. Because Daniel thought he was controlling the story. He thought I knew nothing. He thought he was smarter than everyone around him. And that confidence would become his biggest mistake. 3. The revenge he never expected. Most people think revenge begins with rage. They're wrong. Real revenge begins with patience. For the next month, I gathered information. I learned everything. The woman was named Sophia. She had no idea I existed. Just like I had no idea she existed. Daniel had been lying to both of us. Two separate relationships, two separate futures, two separate versions of himself. When I finally realized that, my anger shifted again. Because Sophia wasn't my enemy. She was another victim, just like me. One afternoon, I reached out to her. I expected hostility. Instead, I received shock. Complete shock. When she learned about me, she couldn't believe it. Neither could I when I learned what Daniel had told her. According to him, she was the only woman in his life. He had promised her a future too. The exact same promises, the exact same dreams, the exact same lies. We spent hours comparing stories. And every conversation revealed another deception. By the end of that call, we had reached the same conclusion. Daniel had manipulated both of us. And now he was about to face the consequences. The question wasn't whether we would expose him. The question was how, and the answer would leave him completely speechless. To be continued. After my conversation with Sophia, I sat alone in my apartment for a long time. The room was quiet, but my mind wasn't. I kept replaying every memory I had with Daniel. Every promise, every late-night conversation, every moment he looked me in the eyes and told me he loved me. Now those memories felt different. Like scenes from a movie where you suddenly realize the hero was actually the villain all along. The worst part wasn't that he lied. It was how easily he lied. How naturally, how confidently. For months, maybe even years, he had been living two completely different lives. And somehow he expected both of us to never discover the truth. Sophia and I continued talking over the next few days. The more we talked, the more unbelievable the situation became. Daniel had used almost identical stories with both of us. The same jokes, the same future plans, the same promises about marriage, even the same compliments. It was like he had memorized a script. And we had both believed it. At first, I wanted to confront him immediately. I wanted answers. I wanted an explanation. But Sophia convinced me to wait. And thankfully, she did. Because patience revealed something important. Daniel wasn't just dishonest. He was arrogant. He believed he was untouchable. He believed he could control every situation. And people who think they're untouchable usually make careless mistakes. We decided not to warn him. Not yet. Instead, we would let him continue believing his lies were working. Meanwhile, we gathered every piece of evidence. Messages, photos, dates, conversations. Nothing dramatic, nothing illegal, just the truth, pure and simple. And sometimes the truth is more powerful than any revenge. A week later, Daniel surprised me. There's something important I want to talk about. The moment he said those words, my stomach tightened. I already knew what was coming. Or at least I thought I did. Then he smiled, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a small box. A ring box. My heart stopped. For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. Was this really happening? After everything, after all the lies, he got down on one knee and proposed. The room became silent. Time seemed to freeze. Part of me wanted to laugh. Another part wanted to cry. Because this wasn't romance. This wasn't love. This was manipulation. A desperate attempt to secure the future he wanted. A future built entirely on deception. And yet Daniel looked completely sincere. That was what frightened me most. The confidence, the performance, the way he could lie while smiling. I looked at him, then at the ring, then back at him, and I forced a smile. Can I have a little time to think? Relief appeared on his face. Of course, he hugged me, and while he hugged me, I realized something. He still had no idea. No idea that his entire world was about to collapse. 5. The night everything changed. 2 weeks later, Daniel organized a gathering. Friends, family, co-workers, people from every part of his life. Including Sophia, although he didn't know she would be there. That was the surprise. That was the moment we had been preparing for. The event was supposed to celebrate his recent promotion. At least that was the official reason. The truth was much different. For Daniel, it was another opportunity to play the role of the perfect man. The perfect boyfriend, the perfect future husband, the perfect success story. But perfect stories rarely survive contact with reality. The evening started normally. People laughed. Music played softly. Everyone seemed happy. Daniel moved through the room confidently. Shaking hands, telling stories, accepting compliments. Watching him perform was almost fascinating. If I didn't know the truth, I would have believed him too. Then I saw Sophia enter. Daniel's face changed instantly, just for a second, a tiny flash of panic. Then he recovered, but it was enough. I noticed it. Sophia noticed it. And suddenly, the countdown began. Daniel approached her, trying to act casual, trying to understand why she was there. She simply smiled, a calm smile, the kind of smile that makes people nervous. Especially people with secrets. An hour later, everyone gathered together for speeches. Daniel stood proudly in front of the room, holding a glass, ready to speak, ready to enjoy another moment in the spotlight. Then I stood up. The room became quiet. Daniel looked confused. I smiled politely. Before you begin, I said, I think there's something everyone should know. His expression changed immediately. Not fear, not yet, just uncertainty. People turned toward me, waiting, listening. The room felt smaller. The silence felt heavier. Then Sophia stood up beside me. And Daniel finally understood. The color drained from his face. For the first time since I had known him, he looked genuinely afraid. 6. His lies fall apart. Nobody shouted. Nobody created a scene. That wasn't necessary, because the truth was enough. Sophia introduced herself. Then I introduced myself. And slowly, carefully, we explained everything. The timelines, the promises, the overlapping relationships, the lies. Every statement was supported by evidence. Messages, photos, dates, facts, simple facts. Daniel tried to interrupt. At first, he attempted explanations, excuses, misunderstandings, but every explanation collapsed almost immediately. Because facts don't care about excuses. The room remained silent. People listened, people watched, and most importantly, people understood. His friends looked disappointed. His family looked shocked. Coworkers exchanged uncomfortable glances. Nobody knew what to say. Because the truth was undeniable. The perfect image he had spent years building disappeared in minutes. Not because we attacked him. Not because we embarrassed him. Because his own actions finally caught up with him. That's the thing about deception. Eventually it becomes too heavy to carry. And sooner or later, it falls apart. Daniel looked around the room desperately. Searching for support. Searching for someone to defend him. Nobody did. Not because people hated him. Because they finally saw him clearly. Maybe for the first time. The silence said everything. And that silence hit harder than any argument ever could. For years, Daniel controlled the story. Now he couldn't. Now the truth was speaking for itself. And there was nothing he could do to stop it. 7. Moving forward. People often imagine revenge as a dramatic ending. But real life doesn't work that way. The exposure wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The beginning of healing. The beginning of freedom. The beginning of a new chapter. After that night, Daniel tried contacting me many times. Calls, texts, emails, long messages filled with apologies, explanations, promises to change. But I had heard promises before. Too many promises. And promises without honesty mean nothing. So I never went back. Sophia didn't either. For the first time, we chose ourselves. Not him. Not his excuses. Ourselves. The months that followed weren't easy. Healing never is. Some days I felt angry. Some days I felt sad. Some days I questioned everything. But slowly, things improved. Very slowly. Then one day, I noticed something surprising. I wasn't thinking about Daniel anymore. Not every day. Not every hour. Not every minute. The pain was losing its power. And that realization felt incredible. Because healing isn't about forgetting. It's about moving forward. It's about refusing to let someone else's choices control your future. And that's exactly what I did. I focused on my career, my friendships, my family, my goals. The life that had once revolved around Daniel began revolving around me again. And honestly, that was the greatest revenge of all. Not exposing him, not watching his lies collapse, not proving I was right. The greatest revenge was becoming happy without him. 8. Final lesson. Looking back now, I don't hate Daniel. I don't even think about him very often. Because hate keeps you connected to the person who hurt you. And I wanted freedom. What I learned from that experience changed my life. Trust is valuable, but trust should never be blind. Listen when actions don't match words. Pay attention when your instincts speak. And most importantly, never ignore the truth just because it's painful. Sometimes the people who hurt us teach the most important lessons. Not through kindness, but through disappointment. Daniel taught me that character matters more than charm. That honesty matters more than promises. And that real love never requires deception. The man who broke my trust thought he was winning. He thought he controlled the story. He thought nobody would ever discover the truth. But eventually, every lie reaches a deadline. Every secret finds a crack. And every mask falls. When his mask finally fell, he was left with nothing except the consequences of his own choices. As for me, I didn't lose my future. I found it, and that made all the difference. The moment he betrayed my trust, he thought he had taken something from me. What he didn't realize was that he was actually giving me something. A reason to become stronger. A reason to value myself more. And a lesson I will never forget. Because sometimes the end of one story becomes the beginning of a much better one. And that's exactly what happened to me. The man who broke my trust never saw my revenge coming. But the truth was coming all along.